What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma, and today I wanted to go over 8 of what I think are some of the best guns and weapons to use in the recently released Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Now, before we start, this list will potentially include all of the available weapons in the game, with the exception of the 100% completion weapon, assuming there is one. Unfortunately, at the time of making this video, Shadow of the Tomb Raider has a bug that prevents 100% completion, and after completing this game literally 3 times now and collecting literally everything on the second playthrough, I'm going to go ahead and wait for a patch that fixes the bug. Despite that issue though, I've had a lot of fun with the game so far, and I guess without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into this list with our 8th entry, and that is going to be Pooka Hawk's bow. While I wouldn't recommend buying the DLC outright if you got the standard edition of the game, the Digital Deluxe DLC gear that's included with the Digital Deluxe and Croft editions of Shadow of the Tomb Raider is quite decent. Not only do you get this nice outfit, but you also get the Pooka Hawk's bow, which doesn't require any upgrades and can potentially serve as a really nice early to mid-game bow. It has very balanced stats, which on average tend to exceed the vast majority of the other bows that are available early on, and perhaps the most important attribute is the Pooka Hawk bow's damage, which is superior to the recurve bow and really isn't outclassed until you upgrade your weapons or until you get to Paititi and get access to either the Atlatl bow or the Heart of the Eagle. Once you do reach the later game, and if you have upgraded your bows, or if you've gotten the Atlatl or Heart of the Eagle bows, you're going to find that the Pooka Hawk is simply outclassed. The recurve bow will eventually be stronger after upgrades, and the Heart of the Eagle and the Atlatl bow stock are already stronger, and after upgrades, they are going to be considerably stronger. For what it is though, the Pooka Hawk bow is definitely nice to have in the early game, and I highly recommend you use it if you have the Digital Deluxe or the Croft editions of the game. That said, if you don't have either of those versions, I wouldn't really worry about it too much. Number 7. The AB-45 pistol. So, the AB-45, aka Altar Boy, is literally the first pistol that you get, and is acquired after your encounter with the Trinity soldiers as you're exiting the Peruvian jungle. So it should be impossible to miss this thing as you play through the game. What makes the AB-45 good comes down to a combination of factors. However, I think the most important thing is its base damage relative to a lot of the other pistols that are available. After upgrades, the AB-45 outclasses the base damage of the CNT S55, the NAP-14, and is only ever so slightly surpassed by the K&H KAP that is a DLC item. However, despite the slightly higher damage and magazine size of the K&H KAP, the AB-45 has the ability to equip a suppressor attachment, which is normally purchased in Kwok Yaku. Having this silencer attachment really puts the AB-45 over the rest of the mid-damage tier pistols and can make some of the earlier areas of the game where enemies aren't equipped with helmets very easy. Plus, when you get to the later game areas where you start encountering enemies that can take a few headshots or are wearing helmets, you're still dealing a fairly decent amount of damage, which should allow you to conserve some ammo. Overall though, I think what makes this thing great is that it's pretty well balanced and it has a suppressor, and for that reason, you really should consider upgrading it. Number 6. The Bishop 600 Shotgun. Oddly, the Bishop 600 shotgun is the first shotgun you get, and is probably the best one. If you ask me, that's kind of a shame considering that of the other 3 shotguns that are available, the Sedgwick 707 is a double barrel and requires you to have gotten the Croft edition of the game, while the other 2, which are the TAEV-16 and the WHWS-16, require you to purchase them from the female vendor that's located at San Juan, which is pretty close to the end of the game. Funnily enough, all 3 of these shotguns are also weaker than the Bishop 600 after upgrades, which kind of makes you wonder why the developers didn't make something like the TAEV-16 available earlier on in the game and then let you acquire the Bishop later. The one thing that I think the Bishop does struggle with though is fire rate, which could be a concern if you're in close quarters with some of this game's tougher enemies like the armored Trinity soldiers, or when you're going up against the zombie like Ashiel. If you are concerned about that, I would recommend the TAE V16, as that will let you sacrifice some damage for a little bit better fire rate. Otherwise, I would recommend just sticking with the Bishop 600 as it's basically free. Number 5. The Wasp 11. While it's unfortunately acquired much later on in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I do think that the Wasp 11 is a great gun. Despite being an SMG, the Wasp fits in the rifle class and uses rifle ammo, and while it's not quite as strong as some of the other rifles on a damage per shot basis, it makes up for that with excellent stats. Not only does it have good recoil control, but it's pretty accurate, reloads very quickly, and also has high rate of fire. It also doesn't hurt that the Wasp 11 is the only rifle in your first playthrough that is capable of supporting a silencer, which makes it especially useful when trying to maintain your stealth and getting the drop on would-be enemies. The only downside is that you're going to have some issues when going up against any enemies that are relatively durable. Something like the zombie-like a shield that you can encounter in some of the game's various tombs can be fairly difficult to take down, as they can simply tank through the Wasp's projectiles. Plus, when going up against humans, you need to score consistent headshots in order to not use up too much ammo, which means that using the Wasp requires a little more effort than some of the other weapons. Overall though, while the damage does leave something to be desired, you're still getting a really great gun here that can be suppressed, it's got good recoil control, and it's pretty darned accurate. Number 4. The Heart of the Eagle Bow. When it comes to bows that you can acquire in your first playthrough, it's a tough choice between this one and the Atlatl bow. However, I think between the two, the Heart of the Eagle Bow simply wins out just because of its better draw speed and rate of fire. Granted, you do lose out on some of the hold time that the Atlatl bow possesses. However, I think you will find that the faster draw speed with basically the same base damage is really preferable. Compared to the other bows that are available during your first playthrough, the Heart of the Eagle just hits harder. This obviously makes various activities, whether it be hunting enemies to fighting off hordes of enemies in the bow-exclusive parts of the game, that much easier. What might take 3 arrows before usually takes 2, and thanks to the faster draw speed on the Heart of the Eagle, you can just get shots off that much faster. If you want this bow, it's acquired by completing the Ancient Studies side quest in Paititi after you receive the Green Serpent Guard outfit. Number 3. The Redding Bolt-Action Rifle. While its fire rate is pretty low, I think the Redding Bolt-Action Rifle is pretty nice. To obtain it, you'll need to either take the Eagle Path in New Game Plus, or you can obtain all of the corresponding Eagle Path skills that are made available during any New Game Plus session, and then visit the male vendor in Kwakyaku in order to purchase it. Now, if you've played Rise of the Tomb Raider, the Redding Bolt Action is somewhat similar to the Bolt Action Rifle from that game, except for the fact that each shot doesn't require you to reload. Plus, what's also pretty great about this gun is that it appears to either have its own integrated suppressor, or it benefits from the suppressor attachment that you can buy for the Wasp, meaning that you can potentially use this thing as a very viable alternative to either the bow or the silenced pistol. The only disadvantage to this thing is the lack of fire rate, which can prove to be a problem if you get detected and or crowded by a bunch of enemies at once. This thing obviously is more suited to well-placed headshots from stealth rather than full-on combat like some of the other rifles or just some of the other weapons. Ultimately, this is a pretty nice gun, and assuming you can get past the low fire rates, I think you'll find it's pretty great for conserving ammo and also for easily taking out enemies. Number 2. The Viper Bite Bow. As far as the New Game Plus weapons go, the Viper Bite Bow is pretty great. It's obtained by taking the Serpent Path upon starting a New Game Plus playthrough, or you can obtain all of the corresponding Serpent Path skills that are available during New Game Plus, and then visit the male vendor in Kwakyaku in order to purchase it. Unlike other bows which fire silent arrows, the Viper Bite replaces these with venom arrows. From what I can tell, and this might be anecdotal, but the venom effect appears to allow the Viper Bite to deal slightly less damage on the initial strike, while dealing some poison damage shortly after. So instead of certain enemies dying instantly from a shot from your bow, there is a slight delay with the Viper Bite. Damage-wise, and from what I can tell, the Viper Bite is about on par with the Atlatl and Heart of the Eagle bows when it's all said and done. However, the upside is that the Viper Bite has significantly higher hold time than either the Atlatl or Heart of the Eagle bows, which can make pulling off Howler's Troop shots a lot easier. In fact, the Viper's Bite is totally superior to the Atlatl bow, and the only thing that the Heart of the Eagle does better is that draw speed. Ultimately, this is a really great bow for your New Game Plus playthrough, and my only real complaint is that I wish it was available in New Game as well as New Game Plus. And for our final entry, number 1, the Vicar Mark II Rifle. When it comes to the automatic rifles, I think this one is definitely my favorite and is possibly my favorite weapon in the entire game. While it sort of sucks that it can't be suppressed like the Wasp 11, the Vicar hits noticeably harder as the Wasp tends to really struggle with more durable enemies. That, and you don't have to spend a ridiculous amount of gold on the Vicar, and you can acquire the Vicar really early on by just simply playing through the story campaign, as you receive the Vicar at the exact same time that you receive the AB-45 while you're leaving the Peruvian jungle. It also doesn't hurt that the Vicar's main competition, which is the PN-TF267 that you get much later on in the game, is ultimately outclassed by the Vicar. This is because the Vicar Mark II has noticeably better damage and reload speed, while the PN-TF267 just has better magazine size. What also helps the Vicar's case is that both of these weapons essentially have the same fire rate and accuracy stats, which means that the damage decrease on the 267 isn't counteracted by better precision or fire rate like we saw in Rise of the Tomb Raider with the comparison between the military rifle and the generic assault rifle. So what this means is that if you use the 267, you're basically just dealing less damage than you would with the Vicar. Ultimately, if you decide to opt for an automatic rifle in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, this would be my choice, as it's hard to beat. It's also going to be the best rifle and possibly one of the best weapons you can obtain until some of Shadow of the Tomb Raider's DLC comes out. Alright guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video, feel free to leave a like, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload more videos, and as always, thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.